Have you ever walked up Great Blue Hill from the Trailside Museum on the Red Dot Trail? Have you ever thought about how unique it is? How the Great Blue is the highest point around, and the rocks that you scramble up to get to the summit are pretty unique to the southern New England. Today, you might get a different perspective on a place that might be very familiar to you. I'm Judy Lara-Jacobs, the Executive Director of the Friends of the Blue Hills, and I'm with Les Taralla, who is a registered geologist, and we'll be talking to you about some surprising history of Great Blue Hill. But before we get going, if you could just put in the comments whether you have ever gone up to Great Blue. That would be great if you have ever visited. That would be wonderful. So this is the first of 4 Facebook Live shows that we are calling Blue Hills Alive. And so we're going to be having them Tuesdays at 1 p.m. So we hope you check in next Tuesday as well. If you have any questions, please just put questions in the comments below. That would be great. And even if you're watching the replay, Les would be happy to answer your questions in the next couple days. So as I said, we will be speaking with a geologist about a story of the origins of the Blue Hills that few people know. So Les, thank you so much for joining us today. And can you start out by just giving us a sense of why you became interested in geology and why you're so passionate about this?
Sure, Judy. Thanks for asking me here. Like many kids, I was fascinated by bright, shiny minerals. And fortunately or unfortunately, that stayed with me into adulthood. And then I discovered I could actually have a career in geology, and got a bachelor's degree from the College of Mines in Arizona, graduate studies in Texas, and have worked as a geologist for my whole career.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm glad you're here today. You have so much information about the Great Blue Hill that I'm sure people would be really interested in hearing. So what is one thing that you think people might not know about Great Blue Hill?
Well, based on my experience of having spent a lot of time here in the Blue Hills, few people realize that we're walking across a large igneous body. In this case, it really is an extinct volcano, is the way to think about it. It goes back several hundred million years. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Oh, that's
here.
Okay.
This is a new thing for me.
Oh, it's absolutely fine. So why don't you give us a sense of why this would be different, why the Blue Hills would be different, why a volcano would be here as opposed to like Salem or Plymouth?
Yes. It's perplexed geologists, not only for the Blue Hills volcano, but also other volcanoes that seem to be isolated, as this feature is. The solution, and it's still debated, is that with the understanding of plate tectonics, that this provides a mechanism for fracturing, moving, banging together continental masses, in this case, the North American plate and the European plate and also the African plate. With this kind of dynamic aspect of the Earth, it allows for deep-seated movement of molten rock, and since the molten rock is of a lesser density than the overlying cold bedrock, whatever it is, these molten bodies will move upward.
So can you give us a sense of how old the Blue Hill volcano is?
Studies have been done to age date it, principally in the most recent time. Professor Emeritus Jim Skean of Boston College and Professor Emeritus Meg Thompson of Wellesley College have had grant money to understand volcanism here right in our backyard. Their efforts have indicated that this particular feature is about 410 million years old, and the age dating is based on certain minerals that contain isotopes, particularly a mineral called zircon, and it has a radioactive isotope in it called U-238, and with geologic time that degrades into lead. The half-life of zircon, the U-238 to lead, is almost 2.5 billion years old. So with that kind of extreme half-life, we can accurately date the volcanoes and, in fact, go right back to the genesis of the Earth.
So what was here before the volcano?
Good question. It's been interpreted as a level area. There were previous volcanic eruptions here, and it's been named the Mattapan volcanic sequence. Where it is exposed in Mattapan, Quincy, Milton, it's basically flat-lying, so it hasn't been disturbed too much. There may have been some topography here where it was flowing downward and outward. But for the most part, it appears to have been flowing out gently on a level surface. The conduit was probably fractures in the earth rather than a true classic shield-type volcano.
Great. So lava is not something we think about when we think of the Blue Hills. Can you give us a sense of what it is and why it would be different in the Blue Hills in this area from other locations?
Yes, there are four broad categories of magma, and it has to do with the geochemical makeup of it. We have rhyolite, which is here. It's a very silica-rich magma, lava, and then it grades compositionally into an andesite, then a dacite, and ultimately a flow rock referred to as basalt. Hingham has exposures of basalt, and the North Shore has exposures of both andesite and dacite, and we have rhyolite.
That's great. So if someone wanted to find lava in the Blue Hills, where would they go?
Well, fortunately, we have lots of good exposures, and we can thank the glacial activity of having done that. Any trail going up to the meteorological observatory will be crossing the lava flows, which, as I mentioned a moment ago, is called a rhyolite, or in the older literature, it's referred to as a quartz porphyry. So if you're doing some homework, you'll see those two terms. And it's very well exposed on the Red Dot Path, and also at the very summit, there are nice exposures there, and also the older Mattapan volcanics, which are dated back in excess of 500 million years.
That's great. So can you say where's the top of the volcano?
That's a frequently asked question. The depth of erosion is so deep here, because we're talking about in excess of 400 million years, that summit, wherever it was, is completely eroded away. So it's a process of both natural erosion and glacial activity, literally bulldozing and conveying away the rocks, so we don't know that.
Oh, great. And it looks like Kathy Edmonds-Bennix, who gave us the name of this show, Blue Hills Alive, says she loves being in the area as a child in the 1950s, wow, in the 60s. So, so great to hear some great memories of the Blue Hills. Is there anything else you want to share with us about the geologic history of Great Blue Hill?
If you have done a fair bit of walking on many of the other trails we have here, you may have seen what is called the giant conglomerate, which is nicely exposed on Route 128. That conglomerate, which is a sedimentary rock, is actually made up of weathered rock from the Blue Hills volcano. And through the process of deposition and turning that loose material into a bedrock, we now have the giant conglomerate. It's an impressive feature that tells us at one point there was a lot of kinetic energy here, meaning something like the Front Range of Colorado, lots of flowing water and moving large rocks and turning them into rounded boulders. Lastly, if you are interested, Professor Jim Skean of BC in 2001 put out a book, The Geology of Massachusetts. It's meant for the non-technical person. It's a very good read, lots of figures, really well done, and I would suggest heading that to your library.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Les, and thanks all of you for watching. It's for our first Facebook Live show. If you want to check in next Tuesday at 1 p.m., we will be interviewing someone who has a lot of experience in long-distance running. And if you want more information about the Blue Hills, I encourage you to download a free guide to the Blue Hills at friendsofthebluehills.org/guide. And I hope that you go visit the Great Blue Hill and go with a sense of new sense of all the amazing geologic history that is in the Blue Hills. Thanks so much for watching.